The Prime Minister joins condemnation of the BBC over the Diana interview. A damning report found Martin Bashir used deceitful methods to convince Diana to do the interview, methods Boris Johnson says should never be repeated.
I can only imagine the feelings of the royal family, and I hope very much that the BBC will be taking every possible step to make sure that nothing like this ever happens again.
Meanwhile, Prince Harry opens up about his mental health to Oprah again.
Every single ask, request, warning, whatever it is, just got met with total silence.
He reveals how he turned to alcohol and drugs to mask the pain of losing his mother. Also this lunchtime. Wales's First Minister condemns violent scenes in Swansea overnight and...
Out of the embers, you and I gonna light up the room.
After a year off, Eurovision is back this weekend, but will it be top marks or nil points for the UK?
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Lucrezia Millarini.
Good afternoon. The Prime Minister has joined in criticism of the BBC after a retired judge found deceitful behaviour was used by one of its former journalists to secure an interview with Princess Diana. Lord Dyson said the organisation's own internal investigation was woefully inadequate. Boris Johnson now says he hopes the broadcaster will make sure nothing like this ever happens again. Well, it comes after Princes William and Harry condemned the BBC about the impact Martin Bashir's deception had on their mother. Our political reporter Shihab Khan has the details.
This interview with the Princess of Wales from 1995 is one of the most iconic in history. The revelations were monumental and are still discussed today.
Well, there were three of us in this marriage.
But an inquiry has found that the BBC was deceitful in how it secured access to Princess Diana and had fallen below its usual standards. Today, while visiting a naval base in Portsmouth, the Prime Minister said this shouldn't be repeated.
I can only imagine the feelings of the royal family, and I hope very much that the BBC will be taking every possible step to make sure that nothing like this ever happens again.
The Home Secretary also suggested today that the government may take further action.
It is very clear that some strong sentiments have been echoed this morning since the publication of that report, and clearly my colleagues in government will follow all of that up. With a free press and free media, the media themselves and our broadcasters and the national broadcast has a huge sense of responsibility.
The Met Police has said it will assess the findings of the inquiry to see if there is any new evidence to launch a criminal investigation, after initially deciding it wasn't necessary. Responding to the report yesterday, the Duke of Cambridge said that many had been hurt by the BBC's actions.
It is my view that the deceitful way the interview was obtained substantially influenced what my mother said. The interview was a major contribution to making my parents' relationship worse and has since hurt countless others.
His brother Prince Harry also didn't hold back in his response. He said, "Our mother lost her life because of this, and nothing has changed. By protecting her legacy, we protect everyone and uphold the dignity with which she lived her life. Let's remember who she was and what she stood for." The investigation found that the reporter Martin Bashir had deceived Earl Spencer, Princess Diana's brother, and forged bank statements that showed that his staff had been paid to leak stories. In response, he said it was a stupid thing to do and an action I deeply regret. The bank statements had no bearing whatsoever on the personal choice of Princess Diana to take part in the interview. But where does this former television boss think this leaves the BBC?
There's no doubt there could be an overreaction by the government, and there could even be an overreaction internally by the BBC, which is actually, if we are only talking about one rogue journalist, let's not tarnish all BBC journalists with what he did. So, it's a crucial moment, really, in the relationship between the BBC and government.
The BBC has accepted the findings of the inquiry and offered a full apology to all those affected, but its response will continue to be under the spotlight. Shihab Khan, ITV News, Westminster.
Well, Prince Harry has spoken of how he turned to drink and drugs to deal with the death of his mother. Talking again to US TV host Oprah Winfrey, he described how he was willing to take drugs to feel less like he was feeling more than a decade after Diana's death. The Duke of Sussex also talked about the pressure his wife Meghan faced after marrying into the royal family and the lack of support he says she received. Neil Connery reports.
The clicking of cameras and the flashes of cameras makes my blood boil. It makes me angry. It takes me back to what happened to my mum and what I experienced when I was a kid.
The Duke of Sussex talking to Oprah Winfrey about the pressures he's faced over the years and their impact for a series on mental health.
I felt completely helpless, but every single ask, request, warning, whatever it is, just got met with total silence or total neglect.
He says he used drink as an adult to try to deal with the trauma of his mother's death.
I was willing to drink, I was willing to take drugs, I was willing to try and do the things that made me feel less like I was feeling. But I slowly became aware that, okay, I wasn't drinking Monday to Friday, but I would probably drink a week's worth in one day on a Friday or a Saturday night. And I would find myself drinking not because I was enjoying it, but because I was trying to mask something.
He recalls his feelings on the day of his mother's funeral.
It was like I was outside of my body and just walking along doing what was expected of me. Showing 1/10 of the emotion that everybody else was showing.
Charles.
So this is my mum. You never even met her.
He also talks about the past few years and the pressures on his wife.
Meghan was struggling. Meghan decided to share with me the suicidal thoughts and the practicalities of how she was going to end her life. The thing that stopped her from seeing it through was how unfair it would be on me. After everything that had happened to my mum, and to now be put in a position of losing another woman in my life, with a baby inside of her, our baby, I'm somewhat ashamed of the way that I dealt with it. It was incredibly triggering to potentially lose another woman in my life. Like, the list is growing.
This new interview will increase the strain on the already difficult relationship between the Sussexes and the royal family. Harry questions the advice he says the Prince of Wales gave to him and William growing up.
Because my father used to say to me when I was younger, he used to say to both William and I, well, it was like that for me, so it's going to be like that for you. That doesn't make sense. Just because you suffered, that doesn't mean that your kids have to suffer.
Harry, who's campaigned on mental health issues, hopes his words will encourage others to talk. Neil Connery, ITV News.
Our royal editor Chris Shipp is here. Chris, two royal developments to talk about. Let's just
Which one do you want to do first?
Well, let's start with Harry first, because we just see him talk there. We have heard him talk before about mental health and his struggles with it, but this interview very candid, isn't it?
You know, I think if we hadn't had the previous Oprah interview, the one I referred to as the bombshell Oprah interview, we would be looking at this one going, oh my goodness, I mean, look at what he's just told us. He's spoken about his mental health, the click of the cameras, his only memory of his mother is when she was crying in the car. The fact that his father didn't help them and said that's just the way it is, get on with the stiff upper lip and just deal with it. It had everything that the previous Oprah interview had, apart from this issue of racism that was articulated by Harry in that interview. So, yeah, I think it's we're not used to seeing members of the royal family talk like this. We are increasingly getting Harry talking like this, but he has a different life now. He's in America. He has this platform and he thinks he's helping others by doing this, by sharing these details in such graphic detail. I think he hopes to be helping others who are suffering from mental health issues.
Let's turn now to the other story we saw at the beginning of the programme, of course, that Martin Bashir interview. We heard from William that statement last night, pretty clear what his feelings were over the issue. And that in itself, that statement, unprecedented, really.
Yes, it was, and I mean, look how much is in this Lord Dyson report here. There is a lot for not just the BBC to go through, a lot that William went through last night. I have been told this, that Prince William does not want to pick a fight with the BBC. You know, he doesn't want this to turn into sort of him versus the BBC. He values public service broadcasting, but there was a specific mistake here and deceit by Martin Bashir. It was covered up by some management at the BBC. But I think going forward, I don't think William wants to sort of pick a long-term fight with the broadcaster, which, you know, he continues to respect, notwithstanding this one particular and big issue.
It is a big issue. Chris, thank you. Or for more information and advice on how to look after your mental well-being, just go to itv.com/Britain Get Talking. Moving on now, Spain has announced it will lift restrictions on UK travellers entering the country from Monday. People arriving into the country will not have to take a PCR test. The UK government, though, has advised all non-essential travel and people against non-essential travel, and people will have to quarantine on their return. And Scotland's First Minister has announced that COVID restrictions in Moray are to be eased from midnight due to an improving situation there. Tighter rules will remain in place in Glasgow for at least another week there. Well, new figures out this lunchtime have shown the first sign of increasing COVID cases in England. The Office for National Statistics Infection Survey says that while the number of people with the virus remains low, they are beginning to increase. Our science editor Tom Clark joins me now. Tom, was this expected, though?
Yes, I think it was. We've been through some opening up. You know, in April, we opened up a little bit. It's too early in these numbers to see any signal from the big step we took on Monday in terms of opening up. But certainly, we were expecting to see, as things sort of gradually return to normal, more transmission. What's interesting, though, it's really too early to see how strong that signal is. You know, it's kind of a hint that cases are going up. How well vaccines are working, what role the new variant that seems to be spreading quite fast in very small areas across the UK might be playing. That's another critical question. Nothing strong enough yet in this data, because it is quite early days, to see what that signal, but certainly it's the sort of numbers that the experts will be watching like a hawk now to see how safe we will be doing further opening in June.
And Tom, you've also been speaking to Sir Patrick Vallance, who's, of course, the government's chief scientific advisor, get that right. What's he had to say? That's
right. Well, he is launching a new pandemic preparedness partnership. So this is looking forward to how do we better be prepared for future pandemics that come along or subsequent waves of COVID should they go around the globe. You know, one of the big lessons we've learned is it takes time to get tests launched and vaccines. One of the objectives of this is to reduce the time it takes to make a new vaccine to 100 days, for example. And they're using their chairmanship of the G7, the government, to try and boost this. One of the interesting things he did mention, they have been surprised, although we knew COVID was going to mutate, been surprised by how quickly it's been able to do that.
I mean, every virus, as it replicates, will acquire mutations. And of course, what a virus will try and do is optimize itself. And what it's optimizing for is transmission at the moment. And so that's not a surprise. I think it is doing it faster than people thought a coronavirus would do it in this way. So it's definitely happening a bit more than people thought.
All the more reason why we need this better surveillance for these variants. That's something they want to see happen internationally as well.
All right, Tom, thank you. Still to come.
Out of the embers, there's a fire burning for you.
Flying the flag for the UK, we hear from James Newman and his hopes for Eurovision glory. But first, a new study of 340,000 pregnant women in England suggests that having coronavirus around the time of birth may slightly increase the chance of stillbirth and premature birth. The research led by the National Maternity and Perinatal Audits found that 8.5 per 1,000 women who had a positive test went on to experience a stillbirth. This compares to 3.4 per 1,000 women who had a negative test. It also found 12% of women who tested positive for coronavirus gave birth prematurely. That's compared to 5.8% of women who tested negative. Well, joining me now is one of the report authors, Asma Khalil, who is Professor of Obstetrics at St George's Hospital in London. Professor Khalil, thanks so much for joining us. It is really important to point out that this risk is incredibly low at the moment, but this is a very big study, so concerning nonetheless.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, this is the largest study in England so far, and it showed that the stillbirth risk in stillbirth means the chance of baby dying during a pregnancy in those pregnant women who had COVID was twice compared to those who did not have the infection, and also the preterm birth, so the chance of going to labor early, again was twice higher in those who had the COVID infection compared to those who did not.
Professor Carlin, was it just about contracting COVID? Any other factors linked to this increase and any other groups that were more affected?
Well, generally in the study, we found that pregnant women who had COVID, they're more likely to be younger. They're more likely to be from Black, Asian or ethnic minority. But also in this study, we took into account other factors that could increase the risk of stillbirth or the chance of premature birth. And even take into account all of this risk, is still the risk was higher in those who had the infection compared to those who did not.
So presumably then the advice is on the importance of getting the vaccine. But what we do know is that, you know, women of childbearing years, they might not necessarily be of the age where the vaccine is being offered to them. Should they be prioritised in that case, do you think?
I mean, I think the findings of this study highlights the importance of COVID vaccination for pregnant women, as it reduces the risk not just to themselves, but also to their babies, and therefore maybe encourages or highlights the importance to actually advise pregnant women or to consider receiving a COVID vaccine during pregnancy.
All right, Professor Carlin, thank you very much for talking to us this lunchtime. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Police in Wales are searching for rioters who set vehicles alight, damaged houses and attacked police cars in the Mayhill area of Swansea last night. First Minister Mark Drakeford has described the violence as completely unacceptable. Well, our Wales correspondent Rupert Evelyn is there now. Rupert, what more do we know about what happened?
Well, this violence appears to have started for some reason after a planned vigil for a young man who died in this area. It very quickly turned very nasty indeed, with cars being set alight. Another car had its handbrake taken off and pushed down a hill. It went through a bollard, hitting yet another car. There were bricks and rocks put through people's windows. The police came under attack, had to pull back a bit at one point for their own safety, say some of the people who were here. Clearly a very worrying time, not least for the people who live here, are pretty terrified for their own personal safety. The First Minister of Wales has described it as completely unacceptable. A lot of the clear-up happened first thing this morning, with many of the people actually from this local area taking part in that. And needless to say, the police are now very focused on gathering all the evidence they can, including numerous amounts of social media video and CCTV. And from their perspective, they say they are going to take a robust approach to investigating what happened.
All right, Rupert, thank you. And finally, love it or loathe it, the Eurovision Song Contest is back this weekend after a year off because of the pandemic.
How does it keep getting better?
Well, among the favourites are Iceland, who won't be able to perform live after a band member tested positive for COVID, and
It's not a maybe.
Malta, they're also in with a chance of being crowned Eurovision winners. You may recognise singer Destiny, a former Britain's Got Talent contestant, and flying the flag for the UK is James Newman with his song Embers. And I'm delighted to say that James joins us now live from the Hoy Arena in Rotterdam. James, this is London Calling. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, London. You might hear the people rehearsing in the background, so it might be quite loud.
Hey, oh, how exciting. Rehearsals underway. It's a huge event, isn't it? I mean, how are you feeling ahead of the big show tomorrow night?
Oh, it's such an amazing feeling being here. There's we've been rehearsing all week. got to play to people in, you know, we've had, the arena's been full of, well, 3,500 people in the audience. So it's just been like buzz after buzz after buzz. So just having such a great time.
So you're having a great time. It's all going well. But we had that issue with Iceland. One of their members tested positive for COVID, didn't they? So presumably you've got plenty of restrictions that are happening there for the show this year.
Yeah, everyone's having, you know, we've got to stay in our own bubbles. Everyone has to wear masks. We have to get tested to get into the arena. So, yeah, my heart goes out to Iceland because I just know how hard they've worked, and, you know, it's just a horrible thing to happen. But we've been really careful, and, you know, we've been isolating in our hotel before we come to the arena and stuff. So we've just been as careful as possible.
And James, you mentioned Iceland there. They're one of the favourites. Who have you been watching? Who do you think is up there? Who's big competition for you?
Well, everyone's amazing, and obviously now it's down to the grand final, so I think it could go anywhere. It's about who performs the best on the night, you know, like who impresses the 180 million people. So everyone's amazing, and I'm just looking forward to getting up there and performing and trying to do my country proud.
I'm sure you will. Listen, talking of doing your country proud, we know that the real drama starts with the point scoring, doesn't it? Because that's the real nail-biting part. And, you know, the UK hasn't done particularly well in past years. How confident are you feeling that you can turn this around for us?
I'm feeling very, very confident. You know, it's about just turning up and showing Europe that you care about the Eurovision Song Contest like everyone else does, and just coming with the best of British. And I think that's what we've done. Got an amazing team around me. I've got an amazing stage show. And you've just got to turn up and be like, look, we love Eurovision. We're here. So I just think, you know, anything could happen. So, trust.
Anything could happen. But listen, James, we're wishing you the very, very best of luck. And we just want to say, can you just rest the voice? No more interviews now until the show tomorrow night. Is that all right?
That's it now. No more.
All right, James, best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you so much. See you later.
Brilliant. Good luck to James. Eurovision tomorrow night. That's it this lunchtime. I'll be back with the ITV Evening News at 6:30. The News Where You Are follows the national weather. But for now, from everyone here on the Lunchtime team, bye-bye.